Old men does dream dreams, and young men see visions. I have seen a long chain of archipelago islands, and in my vision I heard a voice telling me it is the best choice for people of the region to choose, enjoy and rejoice, rejoice. I asked the voice to identify who, what, when, where, how, and why. USWI is the answer the voice replied, which means if we come together as one big happy family, one aim, one goal, free trade, free movement, and one currency. If we pool wisdom and resources in our quest for sufficiency, Farmer, tell them your vision, please. The United States of the West Indies. A mixture of race, class, color, and lingo, with a phrase of cricket, football, steelman, and calypso. But still we need more fortune and fame in art and culture and sporting games. Internationally, we will get more worldly acclaims. Big names, the voice told me it is evident that we must have a strong government in the United States of the West Indies Parliament, which means if we come together as one big happy family, one aim, one goal, free trade, free movement, and one destiny. Our children and children's children will inherit our well-sown seeds. So come up, plead on your bended knees for the United States of the West Indies. Ba, ba, ba. Ba, 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 ba. La, 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 la. Great talents and skills all over the region. Ancestral blessings and wills mixed with pride and passion. But as we believe in democracy, faith in God and tranquility, our people will prosper from now till eternity. Oh, gee, and when the job is well said and done, the motto is all are we is one, with a West Indian emblem portraying the rising sun. Which means if we come together as one big happy family, one aim, one goal, free trade, free movement, and one currency, many nations go on to join us for economic stabilities. So Obama, sing them an anthem, please. The United States of the West Indies. Yeah, the coda. St. Vincent, St. Kitts, Nevis and Anguilla, Cuba, Barbados, Martinique, Montserrat and Antigua, the Cayman Islands, Puerto Rico, Grenada, Trinidad, Tobago, Dominica, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Hispaniola, and so the Virgin Islands, Haiti, if you please, Guyana and the Netherlands Antilles, Guadeloupe and the Bahamas. I begging you to tell them, please. We are gonna tell them if we come together as one big happy family, One aim, one goal, free trade, free movement, and one currency. All them nations go on to join us for economic stabilities. So Thomas, sing them an anthem, please, of the United States of the West Indies. Listen. Thank you.
Oh, yes, good evening. That is the mighty bomber, one of the old timers, one of the old timers of Calypso, Mr. Clifton Ryan, born in Grenada, as so many of those Calypsonians in Trinidad. A lot of them were born in Grenada and St. Vincent and moved to Trinidad. The mighty bomber. He lived until he was 95. He died about a year ago, singing there, the United States of the West Indies. Today's CARICOM Day. 50 years since the formation of CARICOM in 1973, when they signed the Treaty of Chaguaramas in Chaguaramas, Trinidad. The four leaders at the time, our own Guyana's Fobbs Burnham, Jamaica's Michael Manley, Trinidad and Tobago's Eric Williams, and Barbadian Errol Barrow, signing the Treaty of Chaguaramas in 1973, creating the Caribbean Common Markets. 50 years later, it was on a program, I think, in Antigua 2 days ago, and they asked us what we thought about CARICOM 50 years, and I said we survived. We survived. It's not easy being a United Nation of different sovereign states. We tried in 58. We lasted from 58 to 62. That was the Federation. Guyana was not part of it because the government at that time was headed by the PPP, Cherry Jagan. And the PPP argued that if Guyana were to become a part of the West Indies Federation, Indian Guyanese would be a minority in that federation. And so the PPP did not take Guyana into the federation. We were not part of the federation, although many of our people wanted to be a part of that federation. There was a second split in the PPP as a result of that. The first split, as you know, was when Mr. Burnham left, and that was 1955. In 1956, Sidney King and Martin Carter, Rory Westmus, Keith Carter, and others left because the PPP refused to be part of the West Indies Federation, and they were pro-federation. Guyana would write at the time saying that the PPP's leadership has lost confidence in its African executives. And they left, and that opened the way for people like Bihari and C.R. Jacobs, who were Indian businessmen, right-wingers. They joined the left-wing PPP. The only place in the world where business people join the Communist Party. So, you know, they didn't join on the basis of ideology. It was on the basis of race. And Guyana and Martin Carter would leave. The others would drop out of politics for a moment, but Guyana would go on into the PNC, becoming its general secretary. The PPP Burnhamite became the People's National Congress. The rest is history. We know that in the 90s, when Jagan came back to power and Basdio Pandey came to power in Trinidad, and there was an Indian-led government in Suriname, those three leaders met and wanted to form their own regional movement. They didn't get very far with that. But you hear people today talk about federation and CARICOM and so on. We know who is pro-CARICOM and who are anti-CARICOM. Good evening to you. Welcome. Please join the link. Please share the link. Sorry, we're on tonight. Just got back from a forum at the Pan-African Gardens there in the former Merriman Mall. There's a forum there today talking about African Guyanese and land. Sister Shemaine Jackson, lecturer at the University of the West Indies, presented the main paper on land in Victoria between 1840 and 1853. And yours truly spoke on how the struggle for land, African Guyanese lands, continues to today. Nice forum, some very good comments and questions from the floor. We continue keeping on. I told the audience that what we must continue to do is to build an African Guyanese movement to regain our citizenship, because you see, land ownership is part of citizenship. The right to vote, we notice, people are now buying our votes or attempting to buy our votes, and the vote is part of citizenship. And if our people are willing to sell their citizenship, it means that they don't feel a sense of citizenship in this country. And, that is something I will talk about in the coming days on this program with African Guyanese citizenship, where the state of Guyana is not acting in the interest of all of its citizens. Good evening, welcome. We're going to have Mr. Paul Slowe on tonight. We are asking the question, where is justice in Guyana? In the wake of what some people are calling that outrageous outcome, where the young lady apparently was pressured so much that she's refusing to give any more testimony, in a sense, withdrawing or charges. I want to be very careful. We're going to have Mr. Paul Slowe to walk us through. Remember when Paul Slowe was on here, he reminded us that there was a young woman in Buxton who made an accusation of rape against someone. The police interviewed that person in the presence of the young lady, and she was so traumatized she committed suicide. And so that man is walking scot-free. And I remember thanking him for taking us there. And he warned us about the safety of this child. You all remember? It was just about 2 weeks ago or less when Mr. Paul Slowe. And when he said that, you all remember, I snatched on it because it rang a bell in my mind. And maybe Mr. Paul Slowe wasn't wrong. They messed with that young lady. She didn't commit suicide in a physical way, but the outcome is as if she had committed suicide. You see why people like Paul Slowe are important? Because they understand the system and the process, and forewarned us on this program and on his own program. Where is justice? The system. Yesterday, we buried in Buxton one of my young friends, 25-year-old man, killed by a speeding 21-year-old boy. Killed him on the spot, knocked him off his motorbike. And then they turned up with the police. The police escorted the boy's family to the home of the dead man's family to arrange for some $5 million payout. The police My friend could kick himself that he didn't, he's a big man like me, so he didn't video the thing. He took out a picture, but he didn't video the thing. The police turned up with the boy who knocked down my little friend. Turned up with his family at the boy house for them to work out compensation. And when they were in court, when the boy passing through court, the police prosecutor begging the magistrate to put the boy on light bail. Because the boy never committed any offense before. The prosecutor, police prosecutor. Thank God for the Paul Slowes of this world. So please share the link because we're going to talk it tonight. Let me again say happy CARICOM Day to all of us. We've survived 50 years and we're still together. We're still together. We're still together. Let me bring in Mr. Paul Slowe. Good evening, Mr. Slowe.
Good evening, Dr. Hines. Good evening to your viewers.
Oh, Lord. You remember when you raised that question of the young lady from Buxton?
I did. I remember very well. I remember very well.
Mr. Slowe, please explain to us what happened with this case from the last time you were here to now. The young lady apparently has said that she doesn't want to continue. When you were here the last time, the file had just gone to the DPP. The DPP sent back the file for further investigation. Now, deal with that first. The file went to the DPP. The DPP sent back the file to the police for further investigation. What may have happened there?
Well, Doc, let me say this. As you pointed out, the file went to the DPP. Obviously, the DPP would have perused the file, and the DPP somehow decided that there should be further investigation before she can make a decision as to whether to charge or not to charge. I find that very strange because let me say this. That file must have, and I haven't seen the file, but I'm sure it must have contained the statement of the victim. If nothing else, it would have had the statement of the victim. And we all on social media and elsewhere saw that very descriptive statement from the young lady as to what took place between herself and Minister Darmlal. She described the rape, she described the sodomy in great detail. And I am saying that that is sufficient. That alone was sufficient for the DPP to decide to advise the police to institute a charge of rape against Niger Darnlal and perhaps then ask them to continue for the investigation. But there was absolutely nothing that would have prevented the DPP from proceeding or from advising that a charge should be instituted against the minister, Niger Darnlal. And I said on another program that the only reason that the DPP sent back the file, she said, for the investigation, is for them to find reason not to charge Darnlal. In other words, this file did not go back because there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. Let me understand that clearly. Because I am saying, and let me go straight away into the Sexual Offences Act, chapter 69, 1 of the Sexual Offences Act, says here, and I read it, no corroboration of the evidence of the complainant or the sworn or unsworn evidence of a child shall be required for a conviction for an offense under this act. And the judge shall not direct the jury that it is unsafe to find the accused guilty in the absence of corroboration. That speaks for itself. There's no need for corroboration for a person to be convicted under this act. And if, as we all know, the statement of the victim would have accompanied that file, I maintain that that was sufficient for the DPP to instruct on a charge. The DPP's position is not to determine the credibility of the witness and all of that. That is for judge and jury to decide. the DPP's chamber is the prosecutorial arm of the state. And once there is prima facie evidence, as there is in this case, then the DPP is obliged to recommend prosecution. So let's understand that clearly from the outset. There was no reason for that file to be returned before a charge is instituted. And it happens frequently. I speak from experience as a former senior police officer. You will send a file for legal advice. The DPP peruses the file. They will say, institute a charge, even charges of murder. Institute a charge and then send back the clear up this point, clear up that point, and send it back for further direction. So I was tempted to say that this is strange, but this is not strange because from the outset, we saw a deliberate effort on the part of the state agents and agencies to subvert the course of justice and to make sure that a case is not brought against Nigel Damlal.
Mr. Slowe, you made it lucidly clear on this program when you were here the last time. And I'm just following up on what you just said. You made it lucidly clear that a charge could be filed while the investigation continued, and that this is standard practice. You made that point here on this program and other programs. So this is not rocket science. And yet the DPP is saying that the evidence, or implying that the evidence was not sufficient and she sent it back. It could only be send it back, as you said, send it back not for them to find the evidence, but for them not to institute charges. This is ridiculous. Is there any case in recent history, high-profile case, that you can remember that this sort of thing happened?
Well, the opposite happens. The opposite is what happens in these high-profile cases. From the file goes to the DPP. In many cases, again, I speak from personal experience. No evidence, no prima facie evidence is there, and the DPP will direct that charges be instituted. We have seen in recent times, our recent history is replete with examples where charges are brought, including charges for murder. Persons spend 4 or 5 years on remand, and when the time comes for trial, the court, the judge presiding, has had to remark that there was never any evidence in this case. I refer specifically to the Colin Bailey case. Colin Bailey was a police sergeant who was charged of murder. This is a murder committed on his wife or his reputed wife. The co-accused, he was charged along with someone else. The co-accused pleaded guilty, and somehow the co-accused implicated Bailey in this murder. Now the DPP ought to know. The DPP is a senior counsel. The DPP's chambers has lots of legal minds, young liars and not so young liars. They ought to know that the evidence of a co-accused is not evidence against the other person, but the evidence against him or herself. They ought to know that I am no liar. I'm a policeman with experience, former police with experience, and I know that. So much so that after that case, well, recently, I think over in the past year, they have had to, the Attorney General has amended the Evidence Act. So now the evidence of a co-accused can be used against the other co-accused. But at that time, that was not so. And the Bailey was charged, indicted for murder. And when it came to the trial, the judge remarked that there was never any evidence in this case. And to make it even more solid, as I would say, the prosecutor from the DPP's chamber agreed that there was no evidence. So there have been lots of cases. So there's only one case that I can recall off the top of my head, where persons are charged and there's no evidence. And in this case, in this Damlal case, given the provisions of the Sexual Offences Act, especially Section 69, which I've just read, there is no need for any corroboration. And I'm saying, and this speaks to the corroboration at the trial. before the judge and jury. And if there's no need for cooperation at the judge and jury stage, why is it that the DPP seems to be wanting cooperation before she can advise the charge? As my colleague said on my program, maybe the DPP is waiting for a tape, a video recording of the actual rape, the actual sodomy, and all those gruesome acts that were described by the young lady. It appears that in the absence of a video recording, the DPP is not prepared to recommend charge against Dharamlal.
She seems to be on the same page with the president, who also said that before he could act, he must be given the evidence. Mr. Slowe, there are several theories as to what happened in relation to the child. We know the child was in the care of the protective agency, the state agency. We know that she requested legal representation. She was denied. And there are several theories as to what led to her eventually telling the police that she doesn't want to proceed. What is your theory?
Mental torture. My theory is two words: mental torture. The victim, you said care of the Child Protection Agency, and I would advise it not care of the Child Protection Agency. The young victim was actually imprisoned by the Child Protection Agency, imprisoned, because from the time they said that they took her into protective custody, she was locked away someplace. So here you have a case where the alleged rapist, the Minister of Local Government, Mr. Nigel Dharamlal, is put on bail within 4 or 5 hours of turning himself into the police. He's put on bail, so he has his freedom. And the victim, a 16-year-old rape victim, is locked away in some facility, deprived of outside access. She can't go where she wants and all of that. She's denied legal representation, which I'm sure, I've been doing some research, is a violation of the United Nations, the Child Act. I can't remember the exact name, but it's a violation because it speaks to persons having legal representation, children. And this is a child, according to the United Nations Convention for Children. This is a child because they say once you are under 18, you are deemed to be a child. So the child is locked away, interviewed, Blossom, and then some other agency, the police, taken back to the home, to the locus in co, as we say. All that is mental torture on a 16-year-old. And I am saying this, Dr. Hines, and the DPP and all the legal minds can't dispute this, that if the victim in this case had been a suspect and had given any statement at all under those oppressive conditions, that statement would not have been accepted in any court of law in any place. So we understand this clearly, because the fact that after going through all of this, she's broken down, she's browbeaten, she's mentally tortured, and she decided to throw up her hands and say, look, I don't want any further action in this matter, right? There's no way a statement like that, under those circumstances, should have been accepted. And the DPP knows that. The DPP knows that given the conditions under which that statement is, that alleged statement is said to have been made. And then you hear the crime chief talk about it was video recorded and it was in the press. Matters not. Matters not. If you were to look, we like to talk about the judge's rule. And the judge's rule in terms of statement of accused person, she's not an accused person, but a statement of accused person given under those circumstances would never be accepted. So I don't know why the DPP want, the statement, the file has not gone back to her as yet. They say that it will go back tomorrow. And I would like to think that the DPP knows that given the circumstances under which that statement was made, that it should not be accepted. The charge should be filed and let the victim, and again, this is standard practice in policing. Many times a person comes to the station, they make a complaint, and then at some stage they come and say, look, I don't want any further action. Our position has been, as police commanders and so on, let them go to the court and tell the magistrate that they don't want any further action in the matter. It is not for the police to determine that the matter should not continue. Because in many cases, if you were to do that, we know people will go and claim impropriety on the part of police, somebody take a raise, somebody take a bribe. So our practice, at least when I was there as a commander, somebody makes a report and then they come back to the station and say, look, we don't want any further action in the matter. I tell them, go to the court, tell the court. So we're going to charge, and when you're called as a virtual complainant, you can indicate to the magistrate that you don't want any further action. And in those cases, the magistrate still has an option to put the person on bond, to be of good behavior period of time, depending on the nature of the case. So this is a worrying development. And as I've said, if standard practices are applied, notwithstanding the statement from the victim, the DPP should proceed with a charge, recommendation of a charge, and Dharamlal should be made to face the judge and jury. Because I say judge and jury because a rape charge is not a summary charge. A rape charge is an indictable charge, and only a judge and jury can decide on the outcome, on his guilt or his innocence.
You would have seen, I hope, the GHRA statement, the Human Rights Association statement, and they're claiming in that statement that it's a matter of public interest, and so therefore the DPP should act in bringing about charge. Did you see the statement?
Yes, I saw the statement. I fully agree with the Human Rights Association. I also saw a statement from Attorney at Law Dexter Todd, basically saying the same thing, and they are perfectly correct. This, outside of the public interest aspect of it, there is prima facie evidence. And again, I want to emphasize on the mere statement of the victim alone, and I'm sure they would have had additional, if a proper investigation was done, I doubt whether it was done, they would have had other circumstantial evidence. For example, this incident is alleged to have occurred on the 23rd of December, Friday the 23rd of December, 2022. That was a working day. The young lady claimed that she was picked up at the Glyphion Mall about 2:05 the afternoon. Working time, working hours. So any diligent investigator would have gone to his office to find out if he was in office at that time. Where did he leave to go? He would have had, ministers are usually provided with security personnel from the police, either the regular police or the special constabulary. You would have done your research. Who was the sentry working at the minister's residence? What did they say? Was the minister there? They have all of these, the president and these people boast about the smart city cameras and all of that. What did those cameras, have they gone to look at the cameras? Did they take possession of the minister's phone so that the forensic examination of the phone can be done? Did they subpoena the records of the telephone company to see all of that? Because remember, this is not an ordinary rape. This is a grooming by the minister. It is alleged grooming over a period of time before this dastardly act is alleged to have been committed on the 23rd of December. So there are going to be lots and lots of circumstantial evidence, bags and bags of circumstantial evidence. And I have said before that the statement alone from the victim is an investigator's dream, because the statement was so detailed. It's an investigator's dream. A proper investigator would love to have a statement like that, because it makes your job so easy. She spoke about so many things. And let me say this, because one of the things I understand, the DPP wanted clarification or something like that. Some word like that was used, right? She wanted clarification on certain issues. In other words, certain issues might have been raised in the report, whoever wrote the report, and the DPP wants clarification. I said before, and I'm repeating it here for the emphasis of your viewers, Dr. Hines, that the fact that it could have been alleged that Minister Dharamlal painted over the room in which this thing occurred, moved the wrong furniture and all of that. I am saying again that the only way that could have been done is because the young lady would have related the color of the room, and the location of the furniture, and that would have been that would have been given to Darmlal. So in an effort to discredit the young lady, that is what they'll move it around. So you find that clear up inconsistencies. That's the word I was searching for. The DPP, I understand, said there were certain inconsistencies that she wanted cleared up. So I am assuming that the inconsistencies related to all of that. Because she might have said the room is blue. When they went there, they got to emphasize in the report. Well, she claimed the room is blue, but when we got there to do the investigation, the room was green. She said that the television was in this corner. When we got there, the television was in another corner. And that was all part of the plan to discredit the victim so that the DPP can send the file back to say we clean up inconsistencies. What inconsistencies? What inconsistencies?
What inconsistencies? There's a question there on the screen. I don't know if you can read it. Please ask Mr. Slowe what can be done to get the girl free from those prison holders.
Well, what can be done is that I would hope that even at this stage, she's afforded legal representation or own of her choice. I understand from the news, Mr. Ramjatan went there at some time. Mr. Tad indicated that he too went there. And I'm sure that they will be able to advise her what to do. Because I saw something today that she is now at a location where, an unknown location. So it would appear as though she has been moved from where she was and she has been taken to a unknown location. Now, if that persists, then the lawyers might want to go to court for habeas corpus. The lawyers representing her might want to go to the High Court, file a habeas corpus writ. In other words, a writ for the authorities to produce the young lady to the court and take it from there. But I'm sure the legal minds must know how they can approach this matter.
You did say in your opening statement the case has to go back, the file has to go back to the DPP. So for all intents and purposes, this matter is not over. There are things that can still be done to bring the outcome of a charge, right?
Yes, the file has to go back to the DPP, and it is not a done deal that the DPP can say, well, discontinue the proceedings, because as I've outlined, the law is clear. The Sexual Offences Act is clear that the DPP can, notwithstanding this NFA, this no further action statement that the victim is alleged to have given, notwithstanding that, and especially given the circumstances under which that statement would have been made, the DPP can decide, well, look, I'm going to disregard that, institute a charge, and then let the court decide on the guilt or innocence of Nigel Darmlal.
Mr. Paul Slowe here tonight, as usual, breaking it down for us, and this is so valuable for us. Good evening to all of you. It's CARICOM Day. Good evening to you who are joining us from the wider Caribbean. 50 years of CARICOM, coming into being in 1973. I would like to say good evening to all of you all over the CARICOM region, and welcome as usual to Politics 101. Want to give a shout out to the Pan-African Association and Coffee 250 that held the forum today on dealing with the issue of land as a very important component of citizenship. And Sister Charmaine Jackson gave a very good paper and a case study of Victoria. We'll try to get her moving around. I know I will want her to come to Buxton during the emancipation period to share that with us Buxtonians, because there really some interesting information. And as you know, we've been saying on this program all over that we have got to build up a kind of Black consciousness movement so that we are conscious of ourselves as a people, our difficulties, our victories, and our role in Guyana, the Caribbean, and the rest of the world. It's coming up on emancipation, so we'll have lots of that. Tonight, we continue our coverage of the Nigel Darmlal issue. It has not gone away. Yes, the file was sent to the DPP. The DPP sent back the file. Then we hear that the young lady is withdrawing, and many think that it's over. Mr. Paul Slowe is saying here tonight, it's not all gone. So we've got to keep the pressure up, because a case like this has consequences um, for us going forward. Mr. Slowe, some people have been suggesting a private murder charge um, against Dharamlal, and I think.
Okay, you mean rape? You said more. I think you mean rape.
I'm sorry. I'm a private rape charge against Mr. Dharamlal, and I suppose this came out of the feeling that all was gone once the young lady said she wasn't proceeding. Is that something that you would recommend?
Well, you have to wait. You have to wait on the DPP's ruling for us. The DPP might very well decide. I'm saying that all that has transpired doesn't mean that the DPP will say not to charge. We might be surprised that tomorrow or someday after, when the DPP sees the file, when the DPP looks and the PPP reconsiders all the evidence and all of that, especially the section 69 of the Sexual Offences Act, which I read, which says that there is no corroboration is needed. She might have a rethink and decide, look, let's institute a charge. She might advise the police to institute a charge. So we don't know. So I think we have to wait on that, await that force, and depending on what happens there, then we have to be guided as to the way forward. But let me say this, that if for some reason the DPP decides not to recommend a criminal charge against Nigel Dharamlal, there would be no sense filing any private criminal charge, because the DPP is the authority on all criminal charges, whether it's public or whether it's private. And we would have seen in recent times where she would have withdrawn or discontinued private criminal charges. You have the case with the lawyer Singh. You have the case with the crime chief. She discontinued those proceedings. So it wouldn't make any sense. But then they might have to seek civil remedies. If it is that you cannot bring a private criminal charge, the victim might very well be guided to bring civil proceedings against Dharamlal for violating our constitutional rights and all of that. But the lawyers will know how to deal with it, because I've said the DPP can only pronounce on the criminal aspect of this case, but the case is not only for the criminal, why that is perhaps the more important aspect, but there are other aspects as well to be dealt with. You have the political aspect, which you would know a lot about, and of course you have also the civil aspect of the matter.
Yes. Mr. Paul Slowe, as you peruse this whole story up to this point, what are some lessons we should learn, especially those of us who are advocating on the side of the victim, who are advocating against the abuse of power? What are some things that we can learn going forward on this matter? Because obviously there's some things that those of us who are protesting, who are upping the pressure, that we may not have anticipated. I know on your program, on this program, and programs that you have been on, you in a sense have preempted some of these things. But what are some lessons we can learn when we confront such issues going forward?
Now, for me, the main lesson that we can all learn, is that the rule of law does not exist in Guyana.
Yes.
The rule of law is a concept that all are equal under the eyes of the law. That is what the rule of law is. That the law is blind and everyone should be treated equally. We have seen in this and other cases that does not apply. So if the rule of law did exist, Dharamlal would have been would have been charged a long time ago. If the rule of law exists, Dharamlal would not have been sent on bail a mere 4 hours after he was arrested. We have seen in far less serious cases, people are kept for 72 hours in custody, and they are marched before the court in shackles and cuff. So the rule of law, there's no equal treatment. It clearly shows that those who are in power and those who wield power are treated preferentially. And therefore, the small man has no real chance of getting a fair deal when it comes to the legal matters and so. When these and again matters, we would have seen many matters that would have gone before the DPP for legal advice. People are charged for terrorism. People are charged for all kind of outrageous acts without any evidence, because they are small. They don't wield political power. When it comes to the politicians, and when it comes to those persons of influence, matters are withdrawn. Fraud charges and all kind of charges are withdrawn, right? And people are dragged before the court on the flimsiest of evidence. And you know, one of the sad things about all of this, persons are dragged before the court, and years after, in my own case, I can tell you, more than 2 years, and even you don't even have disclosure. In other words, the state can't even say, this is the evidence that we have against these accused persons or these defendants. They can't say. And so therefore, it is obvious that the chambers of the DPP has been politicized to such an extent that the rule of law does not exist in Guyana. And I have said before that when the politicians, people like the Attorney General and the Vice President and the President, when they speak about the rule of law, they must define the rule of law in Guyana context and what it is. Because the rule of law in the international context does not apply to Guyana. Guyana is more the animal farm. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. George Orwell, Animal Farm, that is what obtains in Guyana. Sadly, but it is true.
Sadly, but it is true. And I know sometimes you all will tell me, oh, Dr. Hines, you tire us sometimes when you point out how far we have degenerated in recent times in Guyana. Mr. Slowe, I reference a young man from my village who was killed in an unfortunate accident. A 21-year-old young man was driving his car. He was allegedly intoxicated, and he hit my young friend off his motorbike, killed him on the spot. He went to court, and the police prosecutor was begging the judge to let him go, either on his own account or that is self bail, or a small bail. Is that usual? If that is true, is that usual?
Very unusual to ask a nominal bail in a case where a person has lost his life, especially given the frequency of this accident. And then they would have had, based on what you're saying, they would have had additional the man was intoxicated. If it is that he was intoxicated at the time, he should have been charged for the intoxication as well as the causing death by dangerous driving, and that would have been grounds for him to have been remanded, at least at the first hearing, for him to have been remanded. But these are all very worrying development. Not surprising, because the corruption in the system has spread to all levels. And therefore, when I hear these things, I am not surprised. I'm disappointed, but not surprised. When you hear that the police, as you indicated, is taking the accused person to the home of the deceased for entering into a settlement, is corruption. Because when they offer the family $5 million, I'm sure the man who took them there, he, depending on getting his piece too, he is looking to get his piece, and he would have perhaps gotten his piece even before he got there. But let me say this. I've said it before. It's a practice perhaps in Guyana, the only country. When a person is killed on the road, then the relatives are allowed to say that, they don't want any further action. The offense is against the state, and the relative have no say. They are not witnesses in most cases in this matter. They have no say. Any say that they're going to have is before the court. When the person goes to court and sentencing time, the magistrate or the judge, as the case may be, might decide, well, look, you should compensate the relatives of the deceased person. That is for the judge or the magistrate to decide, not for the police and them to get and they settling the matter. How can the relatives? It has happened frequently in Guyana, perhaps the only place. I don't know of any place else that something like that happens, where a person is killed and the person who does the killing, in this case via motor manslaughter, whatever you call it, can go to the relatives of the deceased and decide to settle the matter. They are not the complainant in the matter. They are not the complainant. The thing will read the state or the police versus this person. So it's a practice in Guyana that should be frowned on.
Thank you very much for that. And I'll be following up this story. I'll be following up the young man. We buried him yesterday. And, in my brief remarks at the funeral, I made the point that, our motor cars have now become missiles and bullets. So many accidents, so many senseless accidents. I asked the pastor for leave to say that, Christians believe that when you die, God is ready for you. And I had to make the point, God wasn't ready for this man here. This young man was killed by a drunk man. Paul, I know you were traffic chief at one point. What? I don't know. You were the expert here. What can be done to deal with this scourge? Accidents. People are even saying that when the present government is power, the thing increases tenfold, 20-fold. But from a real professional standpoint, what could be done to bring some sanity to our roads?
Well, I was a traffic chief on two occasions, two separate occasions, and I can tell you that given what has been happening, given all the evidence, I wrote a letter some time ago, and I said the main issue on the roads, they talk about the 5 C's, but the main problem is the elephant in the room, which is the 6th C, and that 6th C is corruption. We have seen numerous cases where people have claimed, and even the police have charged their own ranks and put them before the court because of corruption in respect to the issuing of driving license. We have seen at least one case where the people from the Guyana Revenue Authority, as we call them, custom, charged for getting involved in inappropriate dealings with driver's license. Many of the persons who are on the road are not qualified. Many of them never took any examination to be there. They pay a money, as we would say, and they are given a license to kill. It's a 007 James Bond license to kill. We are the police audit department, audit and inspection department, headed by former Senior Superintendent Ruan Singh, did a survey and discover the numbers are there. Discover the corruption in the system. We had a case the same case where a certain number of persons turned up to write the exam. Let's say 100 turned up to write the theoretical examination, and more exam papers were handed in than persons who attended the examination.
Wow.
More and nothing. I've been calling repeatedly on the Minister of Home Affairs, Robeson, the man who sits in the chair of the commissioner, to tell the public what they are doing to address this scourge on the road. And they are silent. I am saying that this thing needs a comprehensive review. I'm talking here about the whole process of driving, the acquiring driver's license and all of that. It needs a comprehensive review. We have seen some piecemeal measures, the amendment to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act and one, two things. We have seen the man who sits in the chair directing. This is a way to deal with speeding. He direct that police must line all the roads. Policemen must line all the roads to reduce speeding. Yeah, we have a madness. So they don't have any plan. If you look at the police strategic plan, the current strategic plan, and to see what is there to deal with the traffic, The plan is almost non-existent. They don't have any plan to deal with the madness on the road. And every day, last week on my program, I think there were about 5 fatal accidents. And from last week, Wednesday to now, less than a week, I think we have about 3 again.
Yes.
And it is happening all the time. And the people are there. They are doing absolutely nothing. They just sit back and they try to fudge the figures. So all of a sudden now, they are making a distinction between fatal accidents and fatal incidents. They want to look good. So when somebody dies on the road, oh, it's not a fatal accident, it's an incident. And therefore, when they put out the figure, they're trying to fool people. Well, you're fooling yourself because we are living it. And we know of the madness that is going on the road. Almost every family now has someone who would have been killed or seriously injured on the roads of Guyana. Almost every day, there's a serious accident or a fatal accident. And I'm saying that it's time that the minister, whose portfolio it is, or the man who sits in the chair as the commissioner, for them to tell the public what they plan to do. And it's not only tell the public what you have to do, it's to put a plan out and invite the people, get buy-in. These things require buy-in because you could come with all kind of plan. But if the people don't believe and don't buy into the plan, you're not going to get any place. That's a basic management principle. You have to get buy-in from the stakeholders. And we don't know what's going on. And I am saying that if they can't do the job, go home, get somebody else get a shot and try. The minister is there. He is silent. The last time the ministry spoke about the accident was sometime in February, when at that time they claimed that there were 16 fatal accidents as against 8 the previous year. So there was a 100% increase. And since then, you have more than anything more from them. Every now and again, a statement from the Corporate Communication Unit of the Guyana Police Force about this accident, and nothing more. Nothing until I said when the thing had gone way out of control. I just remained that way. The man who sits in the chair there called a meeting with all the heads of traffic in the Guyana Police Force. Each regional division has a traffic head. And he said he'd rotate them. So he transferred them all over the place and come up with some nonsensical explanation as to what can happen. And the thing has continued. And the reason why it has continued, because there's no proper plan to deal with it.
There's no proper plan. And I can tell you, thanks, Paul, for me not thinking I'm crazy. Because, I quoted at the funeral yesterday, Bob Marley, "Woman, hold her head and cry." That song Johnny was. "For her son has been shot down in the street and died, all because of the system." And I was making the point that there's a system that allows what happens on our road to happen. And you have just confirmed it for me from a professional standpoint. Thank you very much, because I now know that I am not crazy and I was not being a false prophet yesterday when I spoke at that funeral. Certainly, we've got to stop this craziness. We cannot be talking about development when our people are dying, especially the young people are dying. With what you pointed out, there is a very oiled system that turns our motor vehicles into weapons of mass destruction. Really, 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 really. I want to thank all of you for coming on to Politics 101 tonight. Of course, when Paul Slowe is here, we usually have a full house. And I know why. Yes, Christopher. Yes, he brings professional information. Paul, is there anything that you want to touch on that I didn't ask you, whether it's as it relates to the Dharamlal case or anything that has to do with the rule of law policing that you want to leave us with?
Well, yes, Doc. I want to say the people have been protesting. I saw people outside the Square of the Revolution there today protested. I myself has been on the protest line on a few occasions. And we have to continue that. We have to continue that. This thing has to be internationalized. We have to let the world know. The world is watching. Well, we have to let them know what is going on. And I suspect it's not that until that happens that people are going to be brought to their senses, right? Because with a matter like this, I'm referring to the Dharamlal's matter. We must be the laughing stock of the world to see how this matter is being dealt with. We have had so many issues in recent times that has caused us to be the laughing stock. You go one just about a year back, we had this allegation, the Sugate, and what has happened? Hardly anything, no investigation, and to see the person against whom this allegation was made parading and, as we were saying in the country, pomposetting all of the place as if nothing happened and talking about credibility and integrity. He has none. And I am saying that if you are not guilty, then it should be in your interest to make sure that a proper, credible investigation is done. If an allegation is made against you and you are so sure that the allegation is a frivolous and vexatious complaint, then you ought to push for a proper and credible investigation. In the case of this Dharamlal matter, there can be no credible investigation by the Guyana police force because this allegation surfaced around the 15th of June, on around that time. And around the same time, the commander of Region 2, Kemrat Shivbaran, is taking a statement from the young lady to say that she did not make this complaint. She had no how this complaint got there. It took 3 hours and I think 15 or 20 minutes to take a 17-line statement. And I asked the question, I will continue to ask the question, what was the young lady doing there in his office at Anna Regina for all that time? Who took her there? Or who caused her to be there for him to take this statement? All these are questions to be asked and answered. All these are questions. The perversion of the course of justice is clear from that statement taken by Shivbaran, from the way the victim was treated by the child care. And they have to change this word child care because there's no way you can say that that child was under proper care. The child was tortured mentally, was beaten until she's succumbed and say, look, chop Chan, I don't want any further action. And what is important here, doctor, I want to say this. My understanding is that she did not say that the rape did not take place. Very important. She has not withdrawn the rape allegation. This is how I understand it. All she has said, I don't wish to proceed with this matter any further. That is not withdrawing the allegation. So the allegation is still there. And the same thing applies if Minister Dharamlal is so sure of his innocence, then he should be glad to be put before the court so that he can be vindicated. Because if perchance the DPP decides that no charge should be brought against Dharamlal, this will remain with him forever. This will remain with him forever. He will be known or he will be seen as a child rapist. And therefore, I'm saying it is in his interest as well to have this matter properly and credibly investigated and let a jury of his peers decide on his guilt or innocence.
On his guilt or innocence, Mr. Paul Slowe here tonight walking us through as he usually does on these matters. Mr. Paul Slowe, thank you again for coming on and sharing, and I'm sure I'll be in touch with you as this progresses over the coming days.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. And remember, Paul Slowe's show is on Wednesday. I think it's at 2 o'clock, but I know it's Wednesday. His show is on Wednesday. Please make sure you tune in to that show. It's perhaps the most informative a show that we have on these platforms because, of course, Paul Slowe is a professional and he brings evidence to us. And, I know I'm going to try to get him into my own village. It's one thing to have him on these platforms. I'm going to try to get him into Buxton so that he can share face-to-face with the Buxtonians some of this information. Because I'm telling you, this is about human rights. This is about citizenship. And the aspect of the police, especially in a state that is moving towards a police state, is critical for our understanding. I want to thank you all. I want to thank the people in Victoria. I walked about there in part of the village last Thursday, I think. And a couple of you, some of you hailed me up and thank us for the kind of work that we're doing. So a big shout out to the people of Victoria. My own village, Buxton, yesterday was at the funeral there, and condolences to the family. Young Oliver Collins, they call him Blackie, in the village, laid to rest yesterday. My condolences, and condolences to Sandy, another of my friends in the village who passed away and will be buried in the coming days. My prayers and condolences to that family in Buxton, and to all the young Buxtonians who I nodded to, shook hands with, talked to, chatted with yesterday. I want to say thank you all for being citizens, even in a country where your citizenship is not valued, but you continue to be citizens and you continue to make your presence felt. And I can tell that our young people are crying out for some connection to a larger movement. Sometimes we're guilty of putting down young people and thinking that they're not about nothing. And when we move among them, we find out that they're about a lot, and that where the gap is really between us and them. We got to treat the youths right. We got to treat the youths right, you know, because they are the future. They are the future. And we're going to try to do as much as we can to connect with our young people, stretch our arms out and wrap it around them, and use our voices and whatever we have to stay true to our people. We got to build a movement. We got to build a Black movement. We've got to build a working class movement, a movement of the poor and the powerless. We've got to build an anti-dictatorship movement. And when all these movements come together, we're going to be able to stop the rot in our country, to stop the stench in our country. It's too much. Too many people are dying senselessly on our roads. Too many suicides. Too much. Too much domestic violence. Oh gosh, the paper again today, another man killed his partner, his reputed wife. It's too much. It's too much. We cannot be a developed country when all this blood is being shed around us senselessly. I want you all to stay with the movement. Stay with the movement. We've got to build this movement, and I think we're making progress. Anecdotally, I can tell you, as I move around and people recognize me and reference what we are doing for Black people, what we're doing for poor people, what we're doing for consciousness of self, it says that we are making some progress, despite the fact that they call us racists and troublemakers and all the dirty things that they can think about. I think we are meeting a critical mass. So let's continue this struggle. Let's continue building this movement, because it's the movement will set us free. We have been freed before. We free ourselves from slavery. We free ourselves from indentureship and colonialism. And as the shackles have been put on our feet and our minds again, we're going to free ourselves again. It's a constant fight, but with a critical mass of people keeping watch, standing with us. My sister Lynette, good evening. It was good seeing you yesterday. And I know you're saying it's too much for our country, but you're a soldier too. And you're on this journey. All of us are on this journey. giving our people hope, giving our people strength. We will be vindicated. Not too long from now. What is happening in our country is unsustainable. The human spirit is much more powerful than people think. Much more powerful than people think. And we shall overpower those who are abusing the power that we give to them. I love you all. Happy CARICOM Day. Happy 50th anniversary to our Caribbean. We've been integrationists long before 1973. The slave plantation was not a Guyanese phenomenon. It was a Caribbean phenomenon. It was a hemispheric phenomenon. It was a global phenomenon. The slave master didn't treat us as Barbados and Trinidad and Jamaica. Those countries didn't exist. They treat us as the Caribbean. We were integrationists long before 1973. The Pan-African movement founded in the year 1900. The first Pan-African meeting in Manchester, England, organized by a Trinidadian attorney, a barrister they call it in those days, Henry Sylvester Williams. And from that Pan-African movement to now, that Pan-African meeting to now, we have been trailblazers in the integration movement. One Caribbean, linking our hands and our hearts across the waters. Different nation states, but as Black Stalin said, we come on the same ship from the same place. And we must hold one common intention for we women and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man. And hailing up our Rastafarian brothers and sisters. We have Rastas now in Jamaica, Rastas in St. Lucia and Guyana, Trinidad and St. Vincent. And if the Rastafarian movement growing and CARICOM not growing as fast, then it's something them Rasta know that them politicians don't know. Leroy Calise, the black man, singing for the land, singing for the people. One Caribbean, one Caribbean. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man and woman. Love as always. We come today, we come back tomorrow. Dr. Henry Jeffrey is going to be here tomorrow. I'm going to have the Plaisance people on this week. Brother Nigel London is going to be on. All hail to that brother. He was out today at the Square of the Revolution, coming all the way from Linden. I'm so sorry I couldn't get there. I had a prior engagement, and I had to run from that engagement to the forum this afternoon put on by Coffee 250 and Panaf. I didn't get to go out there, but I'm going to have brother Nigel London here this week. So we have a packed week ahead of us. One love, always, 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 one love.
Once upon a time, this country was sweet. People could align freely on the street. Whether was north or south, you could always walk without the fear of molestation. and intimidation. We had no money, but used to live right. People used to be just poor and polite. It didn't matter what. We were always taught you have to honor your mother and father, and then love thy neighbor. Now honor and respect gone through the door. Living in a state of undeclared war. Youths are kid like they insane. Parents want to abstain. Shouting out to call me name. I ain't taking no kind of blame. Something happened along the way now. Honesty was simply thrown overboard. This is madness. Madness. This is madness. Total madness. Something happened along the way. Morality we can no longer afford. This is madness. Madness. This is madness. Total madness. What's going on in my country, Lord? Tell me what is wrong. I want to know.